Hey everyone, I'm Misha Dang. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel, and today is another video about an emergency fund. Okay, because I had a very interesting conversation on my IG story the other week actually, and I posted a question about an emergency fund, and I asked, what was your emergency fund goal? Just because I was curious, and I thought it would be really fun and interesting to see the variety of answers. And when I tell you I got a variety of answers, I mean it. The range of how much money you all wanted to save was wild, and it inspired this video because I still feel that there is a misunderstanding about what an emergency fund is, okay? The answers I got ranged from $5,000 to $100,000 or $250,000 to put in your emergency fund. And now I'm not here to shame y'all. If you want to put that much money in your emergency fund, you know, more power to you, I guess. But I do also know for a fact that some people added their down payment or their wedding goals or their vacation goals into that emergency fund. So I just wanted to redo another emergency fund video to just make it very clear about what the purpose of an emergency fund is. And if you still want to save up that kind of money, have a discussion about whether or not the extra money that you save on top of what is normally recommended, which is 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, if that money could be put in a place where you would get better use out of it. Let's start off firstly with what is an emergency fund. Your emergency fund is for your basic needs, okay? Housing, utility, transportation, medication, food, insurance. If you have pets, please include your pets in your emergency fund, for Christ's sake. So again, the emergency fund is for basic necessities, the bare minimum of what you need. Your expenses for food in your emergency budget should not include that fancy sushi place that you eat at every week. That is not your basic need. So adjust your discretionary income out of your emergency fund. So no trips, no fancy date nights out. Again, your down payment should not be included, or if you're saving money for a wedding, that should not be included in your emergency fund. Emergency fund is for the use of emergency only. You just need it to cover your basic needs in a time of an emergency, okay? And traditionally, it is recommended that you save 3 to 6 months of your bare minimum expenses. Of course, during the time of the pandemic, I think it would be okay for people to save upwards of maybe 9 to 12 months of your emergency fund, and I saw that a lot in the answers to the IG question that I posed. Is a lot of people were saving upwards of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 into their emergency fund, and you know, I think that that's smart if you feel like you need that type of stability. So to figure out your emergency fund, just do your bare minimum expenses, your necessities every month, and then just multiply that by the amount of months that you want to save for. So if you just want to, if your monthly expenses is $1,000 a month and you want to save 3 months for your emergency fund, then that's $3,000. If you want to save 12 months of your emergency fund, that's $12,000. So that's how you figure out how much money you want to save for your emergency fund. And of course, that's just a recommendation. That's not a rule. I fully understand the need to maybe, you know, especially for me, I'm an independent contractor, so there were months where I didn't get paid for 1 or 2 months, and it's a very unstable living. So I like to lean on the side of higher in my emergency fund. So I have 6 months saved in my emergency fund because that's what I feel I need to be comfortable. But whatever your emergency fund goal is, I just want you to make sure that not only is it something that you're comfortable with, like an amount of money that would make you comfortable, but I also want to make sure that it is an amount of money that you could save in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, that's all relative, whatever short means to you, but you don't want to spend years and years and years and years building your emergency fund, especially as you're paying off debt, especially if you have other financial goals. I think it is pretty important to be able to save up your emergency fund fairly quickly, just, for obvious reasons. If you have an emergency fund, or if you have an emergency, you want to make sure that you have the funds to be prepared for something like that. But also, again, I don't want you to spend years and years paying towards your emergency fund whereas that money can be going to something else.
How much of your income goes into an emergency fund?
It's not, your emergency fund's not based on your income, it's based on your expenses.
But my thing is, how do you, so you just, whenever you get money, you just put it money?
Yeah, well, that's where budgeting comes in. You have to balance how much you want to. Oh, I see. Your percentage is what you're asking.
How much?
Oh, I get it. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I threw as much money. I paid off my emergency fund, or I completed my emergency fund after my debt, before I started contributing to, I should be talking to you guys, but before I started contributing to my retirement fund. So I threw all extra money at my emergency fund. But you can do it however you want. Let's say if I was trying to save up my emergency fund while also paying off debt and saving for retirement, that is a balance that you have to figure out. So for example, this is my monthly budget and it has percentage breakdowns that I want to save for. So I'm trying to save 10% of my income towards retirement. And then anything extra will go towards a down payment, and then I try to save 15% of my income towards a sinking fund. And if I make more money than anticipated in my budget, then I'll just add more to that. But it's a really tricky line, how to save for what, when. So again, as I was telling Brian, I was able to throw all of my extra expenses at my emergency fund because I built my full emergency fund after I paid off my debt, and then before I started saving up for retirement and a down payment. And that was just me done intentionally, because I get really stressed out when I have to do too many things. So that's what worked out for me. But you know yourself best and how you handle money best. So you just need to think about what works for you. And then of course, as you go through the stages of saving towards an emergency fund while also maybe paying off debt or also saving for a down payment, you can adjust your percentage goals or your total money goals according to how you're feeling after that month. That's a good question, honey. Going back to what I think I was saying is, it's traditionally recommended to save 3 to 6 months, but because we're in a time of pandemic, if you want to save 9 to 12 months, I think that's a really smart idea. As we've learned, the better prepared you are, probably the more comfortable you'll be in cases of an emergency. But when some people said that they wanted to save $100,000 plus, again, I got someone wanting to save $250,000 for their emergency fund. To me, that's a little much. And again, I believe that they kind of confused an emergency fund with a general savings fund that included their down payment. So that's why I wanted to go through the basics of what an emergency fund is. But if that is in fact true, and of course, I'm not here to money shame anyone. If that's the amount of money you want to put in your emergency fund to feel comfortable, more power to you. But I want to ask the question, and I want you to think about it. Could that extra money be put someplace else that you'll get a better return on your money? Because let's face the fact about where your emergency savings fund is put. It's put into an emergency or a savings account. And savings accounts are not meant for you to build money. They are just meant for you to put your money in a safe place and where it's easily accessible for you when you need. And saving more money than you need, while will make you a very, very prepared person, could actually financially cost you in the end. So I'm filming this on February 27th. So these are the personal rates that I'm getting with the accounts that I have. But according to Bankrate, the national average interest rate for a savings account is 0.07%, but US inflation rates hover around 2%. So off the bat, you're gonna lose money. But these are my interest rates for the accounts that I have currently. Chase, which I know I keep on saying I'm trying to leave Chase, and I am, but still haven't found a good substitute to move all my money from Chase yet, is at 0.01%. So that's stupid. Ally is 0.50%, Empower is 0.20%, and then my credit union is 0.05%. I mean, there was a time where we had higher interest rates, especially with online banks. Online banks have savings rates higher than the national average, you know, compared to a traditional bank like a Chase or Bank of America or whatever. And they normally have lower minimums and no monthly fees, which makes it really easy for you to quickly save up money for your emergency fund, which is why my emergency fund is in Empower. And I actually really do like Empower. So even though I'm only getting 0.20% in my Empower account right now, that's just always where my emergency fund has been, and I like that I can quickly access it. And even though another online bank like Ally might have a higher interest rate now, I know sometime last year that actually switched and Empower had a higher interest rate than Ally. So that's why instead of just moving my money around every time I see a high interest rate, I just like to keep it in one place, and then the market will do its thing. So those are the interest rates of the savings accounts with the banks that I use currently. So as you can tell, it's significantly lower than the rate of inflation, and I would lose money if I kept all of my money in even a high earning interest friend savings account. So they're easy to access when you're facing an emergency, which is the most important thing, is you want access to your money quickly in an emergency. But if you put all of your money, like if you put your down payment funds into a savings account, again, the question I have to ask is, could that money be put to better use someplace else? So for instance, if you want to save $100,000 in your emergency savings account, but 6 months of expenses is actually only $40,000, could you put your that extra $60,000 into a different account that will actually give you a higher rate of return? 10 months of emergency expenses for me at my income, at my basic needs, are $50,000. So even to me, as someone who doesn't have a very secure job, if I were to save $100,000, that to me would be a little bit too much. And I would rather put that extra $50,000 someplace else. So where else can you put your money? First of all, maxing out your retirement fund, I think, is always a good idea. As you heard me telling Brian, I recently started contributing to my retirement fund. You have your 401ks, you have your Roths, you have your SEPs. So there's a lot of options out there for you, and I think maxing out your retirement fund, whichever fund that you use, is a really great way to put any extra money that you may set aside. And then another place to put your surplus emergency fund money is to invest your money. The average stock market return, according to the interwebs, over the past 10 years, according to Goldman Sachs, which heebie-jeebies, is 9%. So that is significantly higher than the returns of your even high-yielding savings account. So to go back to the initial issue, was that some people added their down payment into their emergency fund, which would then have been put into a savings accounts with very little return. But for me, I'm putting my down payment funds into a brokerage account. If you're planning to buy a home within the next 3 to 6 months, keep it someplace liquid. Even though a savings account will offer you low return, that is probably where you want to put your down payment if you plan on buying soon, because again, it's liquid, you won't be penalized, and you won't succumb to any fluctuations in the market. But for me, as someone who's not going to buy a house within the next 6 months, a brokerage account is a relatively safe and good place for me to put my money towards a down payment. Because my friend Todd, you all know Todd, I'm hoping to still do a video with Todd next time I go to Hawaii. He is conservatively investing that money for me because since I'm not buying a house anytime soon, just having that money sit in a traditional savings account twiddling its thumbs while hashtag Asia needs a house is still in progress doesn't really make sense when I can put it in a brokerage account and he can give me a really great return on it because I have the time to wait for the market to bounce back if it needs to. And then the closer we get to purchasing a house, those funds will be put someplace safer. Again, I don't want to get stuck on this point. If you want to see a dedicated video about options to put your down payment funds in, let me know in the comments. But basically, an example like that is very specific about timing and risk tolerance. So that's why I don't really want to go too deep into it, but that is where my down payment money is and why. Ultimately, it comes down to like finding a balance between long-term growth and short-term security. So that's why if you want to save $100,000 plus into an emergency savings fund, then you know that is what you need to do to feel comfortable. Cool, no judgment. I'm not here to tell you how much money to save up. I'm just here to offer other options that may offer you, that will offer you a better return on your money if you're saving up more than a year's worth of expenses. So people are always asking me, do you have a separate savings account or do you have a separate savings fund outside of your emergency savings fund? And to me, the answer is no. My savings fund is my emergency fund. That's why I kind of just group it all together and say my emergency savings fund. But call it whatever you want. Call it your emergency fund, call it your savings fund, call it your rainy day fund. The name doesn't matter. The purpose is what matters. So you all know how to build your emergency fund, figure out what number you're comfortable with in your emergency fund. And if you feel yourself getting a little too crazy with the savings of it, just again, come back to this video and think, you know, after 6 or 9 or 12 months of emergency fund, or 3 months if you're in a really secure job, where else can I put my extra money that can actually work for me? Okay, I feel like there's probably going to be a lot of comments about this video in the comment section, but again, I'll get to any questions you have as soon as I can, and I know that there are people who might have a different opinion than me or whatever, so I feel like the comment section will be very lively in this video, and I'm excited to see it. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope I clarified any confusion that there was in my Instagram. But yeah, that's it. I'm Asia Dang. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next video. Bye.